with intrigue, death, love, and a healthy dose of the occult, the Saragossa manuscript takes the viewer on a dazzling and dizzying journey through time and time inverted. This film adaptation of the 1815 novel of the same name by Jan Potocki is a staggering 3 hours long and features a celebrity cast of Zbigniew Cybulski, Iga Sembrzyńska, Gustav Holubek, Joanna Jadwiga, and Beata Tyszkiewicz. Made in 1965 and directed by Wojciech Jerzy Haas, this phantasmagoria brims with surrealist beauty, the erotic, and of course, ever so fancy swordwork that all serve to immerse the viewer into a sensory-intense universe of power, magic, devils, and a narrative told in what may be the most labyrinthine way imaginable. Saragossa opens with 2 soldiers during the Napoleonic War. One finds an old manuscript in an abandoned building and, instead of being arrested, ends up listening as an enemy officer comes in and translates the manuscript. The author of this manuscript turns out to be none other than the enemy officer's grandfather. The film, generally, follows the journey of Alphonse van Woerden, the grandfather, as he seeks the shortest passage to Madrid, which he claims is through the Sierra Morena mountains. All through this passage, Alphonse is haunted by 2 Moorish princesses, meets a possessed man being helped by a recluse priest, gets captured by the Spanish Inquisition, meets a Kabbalist, and stays in a castle where we are both shown and told interwoven stories from a traveling group of Romani people. The film ends, spoiler, with Alphonse returning to Venta Queimada. There, we again see the 2 princesses and a sheik. The sheik gifts Alphonse an extremely large book so that Alphonse can write the ending to his own story, and it is here that we are given the explanation that this entire journey was nothing more than a game to test Alphonse. The scene cuts to Alphonse waking up under the gallows, shown in the first scenes we ever see Alphonse, with his servants ready to embark through the Sierra Morena mountains as if nothing has happened. In an inn, Alphonse begins writing in the book until he is interrupted by someone calling for him, saying that 2 princesses are waiting. He throws the book aside, and it lands on none other than the table in which the soldiers sit reading it in the very beginning of the film. Saragossa's beginning is actually quite pleasant. We know exactly where we are going and how we got here in the first place. The camera's clear cuts make an appetizing amount of sense and allows us to be comfortable in feeling that we do, in fact, have a linear progression of a story. The unnamed soldier begins talking about his grandfather, we cut to the grandfather. The grandfather begins talking about his father, we cut to him. It makes sense, right? This sets us up to stay in a linear narrative, right? Metaphorically, Haas not only floors the gas pedal, but fully rips the brake out of the car. Saragossa is built like a frame story, a tale within a tale within a tale within a tale-like structure. But unlike the standard frame narrative, these subplots intertwine. This means that stories we hear later in the film embellish or challenge plot lines that we have previously been shown. When this uber frame story is coupled with Haas's incorporation of subtle scene cuts, it makes understanding Saragossa difficult. While the movie is moving forward in real time, the actual plot is moving backwards and forwards, and sometimes a little to the side.
Dziwne się tu rzeczy dzieją, senior.
This is especially apparent around the 1 hour 42 mark. Here, this is the first time that a cut is worked seamlessly into the narrative. Those nice, clear cuts we just discussed between story layers are from now on endlessly more complex. We are now in the 7th story layer here of Senor Toledo, being implicitly told to us by Senor Avadoro. Toledo and Avadoro are talking, with Toledo about to find out that his brother and best friend are going to duel. When Toledo turns around, Avadoro is gone and is replaced by a new figure, his said best friend. Did you blink? I hope not, because this camera is about to snap us back all the way to the 2nd layer. Not only does the viewer have to keep track of a list of storylines and characters that just keeps growing, but the camera stubbornly keeps interrupting its own story that begins once the cuts become less obvious as seen with Toledo. Around the hour 45 mark, the camera interrupts its own story by jumping from layer 7 back to layer 2, which is Alphonse's timeline.
Proszę wybaczyć, ale wzywają mnie obowiązki.
Znowu w tak ciekawym miejscu.
Here, Haas is a little on the nose in acknowledging his whip-quick switches, as Alphonse, the film's main character, is put in a position as a co-sharer of our confusion as an audience. A thinly veiled nod by Haas towards his recognition of the film's complexity, nevertheless, Alphonse's shown mental stumbles act as a relieving acknowledgement for the audience that, yes, things are complicated, and yes, they're going to get even more messy. The camera interrupts itself in a rapid-fire succession when it comes to Lopez Suarez and Señor Basqueros. By the way, it does pay to watch Part 2 multiple times, as characters here are often not named until their story is well underway. With this yet another seemingly tangential subplot,
Dla zabicia czasu proponuję ci pewną historię.
Suarez is forbidden to form a relationship with the Moro family due to interfamily drama that we are both shown and told by way of another character, Suarez's father. The agreement of no fraternization with the Moro family works as well as...
Jakie przeczucie zapowiadało mi, że wejdę tam niezawodnie w jakieś czułe stosunki.
Here, Basqueros aims to help Suarez with his heartache by telling a tale of his own romantic whims. However, in this retelling, the romantic tryst is interrupted thrice, each on a different level of narrative. Not counting the fact that the woman Basqueros is sleeping with was just shown in bed with her husband, the scene disturbed by none other than Basqueros' own peeping eyes. That would bring it to 4 interruptions.
Że gdy przyzwoity człowiek opowiada ci swą pasjonującą historię, nie powinieneś mu przerywać. Nie.
The first interruption is a break from Basqueros' long-winded tale to him treating Suarez's wound that he himself inflicted. We go back, reminded that this whole thing started with Basqueros telling a story to his best friend. The setting and time of day has also changed, from outdoors and sunny to inside and nighttime. We are then thrust back into Basqueros' story, but this time the next interruption comes from an intruder attempting to climb into the window. Here, an unnamed external character is forcing their way into the narrative. Finally, through the act of Basqueros receiving a letter, we are yanked back to progress with the original storyline of Suarez and Inez. Trying to individually plot these detours proves debilitatingly difficult and distracting from the overall rhythm of the film.
Niewprawnych myślenie o tych sprawach doprowadzić może do obłędu.
Saragossa as a whole is wildly wordy, and this subplot with Basqueros and Suarez is a brilliant example of Haas forcing the audience to rely on heavy dialogue to follow and keep up with the overall plot. These interruptions do track, but only if the film is allowed to play without pause and the viewer is completely engrossed in what the characters are saying. If your attention as the viewer slips even for a moment, you quickly become lost in the circular, looping time flow that makes up the Saragossa universe. Besides camera interruptions, Haas's, at times seemingly unending, camera fluidity also served to distort time. As we previously pointed out, this film is long. Our attention is stretched thin, and the effort it takes to concentrate on one thing for 3 consecutive hours is a massive strain, both mentally and physically. On top of this, the scenes seem to be shot in one take. The lens follows the character's movement through buildings, packed streets, around animals, without any pause. The set of the movie is completely foreign to us, and given that we are not told where we are at any point in the film, the ease and quickness at which we are moving through the Saragossa world is not a true reflection of our knowledge of the film's geography. How long does it get to take from one spot to the other? We have no reference on which to base our knowledge of travel time, thus the length of the scenes is lost on us. For an extra twist on distorting travel time, scenes in Saragossa are repeated. For instance, we have Alphonse traveling through the mountains between Andalusia and La Mancha, only for this to be repeated by Pancheo and then again by Alphonse, and finally by Velasquez, which is the viewer's first time encountering this major character.
Jestem Don Pedro Velasquez!
Not only are all of these scenes happening in different layers of the narrative being told by different people, they are also at different points of time. While none are in the actual present of the film, that present exists in that war-torn building where our two soldiers are still reading the found manuscript. Remember them? The scene where it is Panchao's turn through the mountains is happening before Alphonse, even though it is shown after. Big, open swaths of a relatively plain setting show us no way of gauging how much time has passed. Where's the sun? Is it ever nighttime? But that wide lens keeps moving and moving and moving, and it is better if we just sit back and allow it to take us wherever it plans on going. These wide camera lenses are important to the challenge that Haas imposes on the viewer. In terms of showy cinematic effects and angles, there aren't that many, if at all. Instead, wide, almost panoramic camera shots that encompass an intricately detailed cinematic world are most prominent in this film, and are usually presented alongside long-winded soliloquies. But seriously, this film is so dialogue-heavy that even the characters feel it. Suarez challenges Vasqueros to a duel purely to get him to stop talking. Over and over, we are shown a lot more space than we need, with the character's physical presence not overly dominating a scene. This makes viewing the film incredibly distracting, as our attention is stretched trying to concentrate on the character's words and actions, as well as all of the background objects. The camera is so relentless in how much of its surroundings it absorbs and shows to us, that watching Saragossa becomes a gluttonous experience. We become so entangled trying to just take it all in, and keep up with who is on screen, that it's very easy to forget what's going on. Watching a film in such a way for an hour is demanding, but for Saragossa's 3, it is a feat in and of itself. Haas brilliantly created a sustained disorientation through his wide lenses that it is a relief that he refrained from adding complicated lighting or close-ups, as that would have bordered on over the top and effective to the point of ineffectiveness.